Hi, I'm Beth. I'm Robin Verity's eldest daughter, and in a parallel universe, I would have been sitting my A-level exams until about 2.5 weeks ago. In many ways, I guess, because of this, you could argue that actually lockdown should not have been such a bad thing for me or my year group. We've managed to nicely get out of the last 3 months that would have been revision and then exams and the continuous cycle of what accompanies that. But actually, there have been elements that have been really hard. Not just the binge watching Netflix either. But suddenly, with the removal of exams and A-levels, our normality has also gone. The exams, the mocks, the homework, the revision, the lessons, the rigid school structure is no longer there. And this suddenly leaves us floating. And this isn't just A-level and GCSE students who have been robbed of their opportunity to show themselves. This is everyone. This is the impact of lockdown, is that our structures and what we had used to determine how we used our days and even how we identified ourselves, whether that be work or school or volunteering or just interaction with others, has gone. Though, from a more optimistic note, this gives us a clean slate. But the BBC have been running this series of podcasts called the Rethink podcasts. They're on Radio 4. But basically it's the recruitment of thinkers and activists from all walks of life and all professions and careers, talking about in 7-minute snippets what they think we can do with a post-pandemic world, whether that be democracy or sport. One of these, an Amand Gerendaradas, talks about 2020 foresight compared to 2020 hindsight. The way that actually with the COVID pandemic, we have the opportunity to change how we live from looking ahead at how we were living in the past and how this period of lockdown and uprooting of normality gives us a chance to change. So I saw this in today's reading, which is from Matthew, and it's the story of the paralysed man. And it also has this aspect of being given a second chance. So I'll read it to you and then. After getting into a boat, he crossed the water and came to his own town. And just then some people were carrying a paralysed man lying on a bed. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." Then some of the scribes said to themselves, "This man is blaspheming." But Jesus, perceiving their thoughts, said, "Why do you think evil in your hearts? For which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Stand up and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He then said to the paralytic, "Stand up, take your bed and go to your home." And he stood up and went to his home. When the crowd saw it, they were filled with awe, and they glorified God who had given such authority to human beings. So in this extract from Matthew, other than Jesus, there are 3 main characters, or groups of characters. There are the people, which in other translations are described as friends. There are the scribes, or the Pharisees, and then there's the paralytic man himself. And all of these have a very different presentation and interpretation to faith and how they should respond to actions. So, to start with the friends, they are the people who carry the paralytic man to Jesus. Their faith and their actions are visible. Jesus sees their faith. In fact, in many ways, they're quite like campaigners, which, if you're anything like me and in a sort of perpetual state of shame for how little you're doing to the world, activists can be quite intimidating in a bad sort of way, or even, dare I say it, loud 18-year-olds, overly passionate, they're also quite intimidating. But it's a very active and visible and passionate faith. This directly contrasts to the scribes, or the Pharisees, who are completely distant from the events that are going on around Jesus, purposefully so. They do not show what they think, but Jesus perceives their thoughts. It's internalised. And actually, in a modern day society, it would almost be they're hiding behind the bureaucracy. They're picking apart the actions of Jesus and the people. Jesus is blaspheming. The fact that he's telling this man that his sins are forgiven are irrelevant. What is important is the fact that he's breaking Jewish law. And I find in a way this quite hard, because it's so easy to be the scribes. It's so easy to hide behind the minutiae of the law, or what is right or wrong, whether that's Extinction Rebellion or Black Lives Matter, or even the functioning of the government. It's so easy to just go, they're doing it wrong, and deny any good intentions at all. And the objectifying of the paralysed man that they do in this is also potentially very damaging. Pope Francis, in his address to the UN in 2015, described it as human beings are easily disregarded when our only response is to draw up lists of problems, strategies, and disagreements. We hide in the bureaucracy and the morality of it, and actually lose what is so important about the actions of the friends. And the third character is the paralysed man himself. And in so many ways, he's the bravest of all of them. We don't know what his background is, but it's got to be seen in the context. So he is living in a society with which there is no anaesthetic, there is no penicillin, there is no basic healthcare at all. He might well have been paralysed by an injury, and then not only gone through the pain of the injury, but the humiliation of living in an incredibly patriarchal society where he was expected to be a leader and a family, the head of the family, and yet he is being carried by his friends. It is humiliation. He is completely helpless. But yet, he takes the risk and trusts Jesus and his friends' faith, and maybe his own, that to stand up and walk. And in doing this, he is not just getting new legs, he's getting a new life. He becomes a new person. And the thing that it doesn't include in Matthew, but is in the Luke retelling of this story, is that once the man got up in front of them all, took the bed he had been lying on, and went home praising God. He knows exactly who did this to him and for him. So let's go back to Anand Giridharadas, the thinker who I referenced at the beginning. We have been given a new beginning with this lockdown, despite the pain that we have had to go through to get here. Like the paralysed man, the journey has not been easy at all, but once we're there, we get a new slate in so many ways. We get a new society. The economy cannot function as it functioned before because it is in a wreck. We can step over the pain and use it as a strengthener if we so choose. Giridharadas said that when we look back on this time, we may remember the terrible year that gave us 2020 foresight. The year that allowed us to see more clearly than before what we are allowing ourselves to become and to choose other roads. We have been given new legs with which to walk these roads, and a fresh chance to reshape not only our lives but the lives of those who follow us. So, get up and walk, praising God.